In 1974, a laid-off textile worker in rural Alabama named Earl Whitfield found that his Social Security check barely covered the electric bill. So every Wednesday he set a folding table by the highway and repaired small engines people dropped off on their way to work. On weekends he split firewood he'd felled months earlier and left seasoning behind the barn. Once a month, before sunrise, he walked the ditches along the county line gathering scrap aluminum. He never thought of it as a company. He just called it keeping the lights on. Most months, Earl still brought home more than his daughter earned at the plant. Long before anyone printed the word side hustle on a magazine cover, small-town Americans were quietly running second incomes out of garages, back porches, station wagons, and kitchen tables. 20 of those hustles paid for home additions, orthodontist bills, and college tuition for kids whose parents never went. One job at a time. Paid in cash. Number 14 on today's list brought in so much unreported cash by the late 1970s that the IRS began combing through small-town bank records. Number 6 quietly built an underground economy so woven into rural life that nobody spoke of it openly, because everyone leaned on it privately. Go ahead and hit subscribe before we start. A few of these hustles are still alive today, and getting started usually required nothing more than a truck, a tool, and a name people could trust. Now think back. Picture the small town you grew up in, or the one your parents always talked about at the dinner table. The man who could fix anybody's mower. The woman whose wedding cakes were requested from miles around. The guy with the beat-up truck who showed up whenever something heavy needed moving. Ever wonder how much these people actually made? For most of them, it was more than you'd guess. And their business model was far simpler than anything a consultant could dream up. Let's count them up, starting with number 1. Number 1. Custom taxidermy. Working out of a basement or backyard shed thick with the smell of borax and tanning solution, the local taxidermist wasn't a luxury in hunting country, he was a necessity. He could turn a trophy buck into a mount that hung proudly over the fireplace for decades. A deer's shoulder mount in the 1970s ran $35 to $50, while a mounted fish brought $20 to $30. A craftsman known for realistic eyes and natural posture kept a waiting list stretching from November clear into spring. He worked nights and weekends around his regular job. During hunting season his phone never stopped, hunters showing up with capes still warm in garbage bags, hoping to make the cut before the list closed. A talented taxidermist could pull in $3,000 to $5,000 across those 3 peak months alone, enough for a boat, a new roof, or a full year of a kid's tuition. Number 2. CB radio setup and repair. The CB craze took off in the mid-1970s, and by 1977 more than 11 million units sold across the country in a single year. Trucks, teenagers' bedrooms, and dashboards everywhere suddenly needed a unit installed, tuned, and inevitably fixed. Any hobbyist who'd spent years tinkering with ham radios in his basement found himself with a 6-week wait list and more money than the hobby had ever produced. A standard vehicle install cost $15 to $25, with antenna mounting tacking on another $10. Fixing a burned-out channel selector became steady repeat business. His workbench vanished under coax cable and SWR meters. For roughly 5 booming years, CB repair was one of the most lucrative garage hustles in small-town America. Those who saw the next trend coming rolled straight into satellite dish installation without missing a paycheck. Number 3. Baking for the whole community. She never called herself a caterer. She was simply the woman you phoned for a 3-tier wedding cake, a sheet cake for the church supper, or 4 dozen cookies for the school fundraiser. A decorated birthday cake in the 1970s went for $5 to $8, and a wedding cake ran $25 to $50. Working from her own kitchen with recipes copied in her mother's handwriting, she decorated with a steady hand shaped by years of practice, filling the house with the smell of vanilla and buttercream. Orders came purely by word of mouth, and her calendar stayed packed through graduation season and every June wedding. Some women pulled in $200 to $300 cash dollars a month. Grocery store bakeries eventually beat her on price, but they never came close to a cake that tasted like somebody genuinely cared who was going to eat it. Number 4. Trapping and selling fur. across rural America in the 60s and 70s. Running a trap line along creeks and fence rows counted as legitimate winter work. A man rose before daylight, checked his traps in the cold dark, and sold the pelts to a fur buyer who made rounds through small towns every few weeks. In 1978, a good muskrat pelt fetched $3 to $5, while raccoon brought $8 to $12. A trapper working 50 to 80 sets could clear $200 to $400 a month all winter long. Kids learned to skin alongside their fathers, the same way those fathers had learned. Through the 1980s, the anti-fur movement grew and prices caved. A muskrat pelt worth $5 fell to 50 cents by 1990. Fur buyers stopped making the circuit, and a family income source that had lasted a century vanished within 10 years. Number 5. Home-based music lessons. Nearly every third block had a piano teacher. She kept an upright in the front room, a metronome resting on top, and a dish of candy for students who'd actually practiced their scales. In the 1960s, a half-hour lesson ran $1 to $1.50. By 1980, that had climbed to $5. Teaching 15 to 20 kids a week, she could clear $75 to $100 monthly, solid extra income without ever leaving home. Guitar, trumpet, and drum lessons ran the same way, taught by whoever had played in the marching band decades earlier and never quit. Recitals happened right in the living room on folding chairs. More than music, these lessons taught kids something bigger. That practice actually paid off. Number 6. Odd jobs and hauling for cash. Nobody gave this hustle an official title, but every small town had 3 or 4 guys running it. Stump needs pulling? Call Ray. Couch needs moving across town? Call Ray. Garage needs clearing before the estate sale? Call Ray. Jobs ran about $10 in the 1970s, sometimes more depending on the work. These men dealt strictly in cash, no invoices, no receipts, no tax return that told the whole story. Their trucks had dented tailgates and toolboxes bolted into the bed. A tow chain, a come-along, and a chainsaw that always fired on the third pull. The underground economy these guys built was massive. Labor swapped for labor, cash traded for favors, venison handed over for help fixing a pipe. Nobody talked about it, because everybody used it. Number 7. Photographing local events. Before cameras lived in everyone's pocket, the town photographer was essential at every wedding, graduation, family reunion, and church picnic. He shot on film, developed prints in a basement darkroom, and handed them over in a cardboard folder stamped with his name. A wedding package in the early 1970s cost $75 to $150, while senior portraits ran $15 for a sitting plus 5 prints. He knew every family in town, which grandmother had to be in the front row, which uncle needed to stand across the room from his ex-wife. 1-hour photo labs showed up in the 1980s, and digital cameras finished the job in the 2000s. But for a whole generation, the man behind the camera was the keeper of a small town's memories, and he earned solid money being the only one trusted with the job. Number 8. Upholstering furniture. Working from a garage corner stacked with fabric bolts, jars of tacks, and the sharp smell of contact cement, he could take a couch bound for the curb and hand it back looking brand new. Reupholstering a sofa in the 1960s cost $35 to $60, while a new one ran $200 or more. The math wasn't hard to follow. He stripped the old fabric, swapped out flattened padding, and pulled fresh material tight across the frame. Customers picked from sample books thick as a phone book, floral patterns, harvest gold, avocado green. Cheap imported furniture killed the trade by the 1990s. Once a new couch cost less than fixing the old one. Before that happened, upholstery work supported an entire generation of craftsmen who never bothered hanging a sign. Number 9. Selling backyard eggs. 20 hens laid roughly a dozen eggs a day. In the 1960s, a dozen farm-fresh eggs sold for 30 to 40 cents right at the back door, handed over in a cardboard carton that came back empty the following week. A bag of laying feed cost $3 and lasted 2 weeks. The coop was nothing but scrap lumber and chicken wire. These eggs looked nothing like the ones at the grocery store, yolks that sat tall and ran a deep orange. Customers noticed, and they kept coming back on their own. Some sellers even built waiting lists. Health rules tightened through the 1970s and store prices dropped. But a whole generation grew up knowing exactly where breakfast came from, because it came from 20 feet out the back door. Number 10. Running the unofficial town taxi. In towns too small for an actual cab company but too spread out to walk everywhere, somebody always ended up providing rides. Usually it was a retired man with a four-door sedan and nowhere pressing to be. He drove elderly neighbors to appointments in the county seat, ran teenagers to the movie theater in the next town, and hauled groceries for widows who'd given up driving years back. The fare was whatever seemed fair, $1 across town, $3 to the county seat, $5 out to the hospital 40 miles away. Making 3 or 4 runs a day in the 1970s could clear $15 to $20. He knew every shortcut in the county and everyone's weekly schedule. Volunteer transport programs eventually took over, but for 30 years that man with the sedan was often the most important person left in towns everyone else had forgotten. None of these people ever wrote a business plan, took out a loan, or sat across from a banker. All they needed was a skill, showing up consistently, and a reputation in a town small enough that news traveled fast. The next group understood that better than anyone on this list. Number 11. Taking in ironing and mending. The ironing board never came down from the back room. She charged 10 to 15 cents a shirt in the 1960s, working her way through a customer's basket while the TV played in the background. 5 or 6 regular families brought in $10 to $15 a week. Add in mending, hemming pants, swapping zippers, flipping worn collars, and a skilled seamstress cleared $25 weekly without ever leaving the house. Some women built up client lists of 20 families or more, picking up bundles on Monday and handing back pressed shirts by Wednesday. The smell of hot starch and steam meant steady money coming in. Permanent press fabric arrived in the mid-1970s and wiped out the ironing trade almost overnight. A hustle that had carried women through 2 generations disappeared inside a decade. Number 12. Selling cured firewood. In towns heated by wood stoves, firewood was really a year-round business wearing a winter disguise. Sharp operators spent spring and summer cutting dead timber and stacking cords to cure in the open air. By October, they had inventory stacked up while everyone else was just getting started. A cord of dried oak sold for $35 in 1970. By 1982, the energy crisis had pushed that number to 75 as families switched back to wood heat once oil prices doubled. A man with a chainsaw, a splitter, and a teenage helper on weekends could turn out 2 to 3 cords a week. 3 cords at $40 each meant $120. Close to what some men made at their actual jobs. The firewood trade peaked during the 1973 oil embargo, when anyone with a woodlot realized he'd been sitting on something valuable. Number 13. Informal neighborhood daycare. Before licensed daycare reached most rural towns, childcare ran through a network of neighborhood women who watched 4 or 5 kids at once in their own living rooms. It cost $1 per child per day in towns where the nearest licensed center sat 30 miles away. Mothers dropped their kids off at 7 and picked them up at 5. Some women kept these arrangements running for years, pulling in $200 to $300 cash dollars a month. Their reputation rested on one simple fact: no child ever went home worse off than they arrived. As state licensing rules expanded through the 1980s, this informal network gave way to regulated centers. But for decades, the neighbor who watched the kids was the quiet infrastructure that let small-town mothers actually hold down jobs. Number 14. Fixing small engines from home. The guy who could repair a lawnmower, chainsaw, or garden tiller never lacked for customers between April and October. Most households in the 1970s owned 2 or 3 small engines, and none of them ran right past a single season. Cleaning a carburetor cost $5, and a full tune-up ran $10. He never bothered advertising. Word of mouth kept his weekends so full he had to start turning people away by May. By the late 1970s, the IRS began looking into the cash economy these men represented, since some were pulling in $5,000 to $8,000 untaxed dollars a year. The crackdown pushed a few to start filing. Others simply switched to getting paid in firewood or help with fencing. The hustle never really died. Every small town still has a guy fixing mowers in his garage, just charging $60 now instead of $5. Number 15. Gathering and selling aluminum cans. When Reynolds Metals started buying back aluminum cans in 1968 at a penny apiece, it unintentionally launched a whole new economy in small towns everywhere. Kids dragged trash bags along county roads after every 4th of July weekend. Retired men crawled state highways at dawn, stopping every 50 yards to pick cans off the shoulder. By 1975, the payout had climbed to nearly 2 cents, and a committed weekend collector could haul in 500 to 1,000 cans. Churches ran collection drives, and scout troops competed over total tonnage. Some families built wire mesh bins in the side yard for neighbors to toss cans into as they walked past. A family working weekend mornings could clear $10 to $20 a week, enough to cover a week of school lunches. The can hustle taught an entire generation one lesson: what other people throw away still has value to whoever's willing to go pick it up. Everything up to this point took time, plus a truck or a sample case. What comes next is different. Real trades that took years to master and never really stopped paying, because the demand never disappeared and hardly anyone else could do it. In a small town, being the only person who could handle a job was practically a monopoly. If you're still here, go ahead and subscribe and drop a like on this video. It helps this channel reach more people, and it tells me you're enjoying the countdown. Things are about to get serious. Number 16. Direct sales, Avon, Tupperware, Fuller Brush. Long before multi-level marketing became a punchline, direct sales was the most common side income for small-town women. An Avon lady covered her town on foot, knocking on doors with a sample case and catalog in hand. By 1965, Avon counted over 400,000 representatives nationwide. A strong seller in a town of 2,000 earned $50 to $100 monthly in commission. Tupperware parties turned living rooms into showrooms, while Fuller Brush men worked porches demonstrating mops and leaving free samples. What made this work wasn't sales skill, it was trust. You bought from Betty because her daughter sat next to your son in class. Reputation was the business model, and it thrived for 2 decades, until shopping malls pulled the customers away. Number 17. Hauling scrap metal. A man with a pickup and a strong back could carve real money from scrap through the 1960s and 70s. Old washing machines, busted water heaters, copper wire stripped from torn-down buildings, every bit had a price at the regional scrapyard. In 1972, steel sold for $40 a ton, copper brought 50 cents a pound. The strategy was simple: drive back roads and alleys, knock on doors, offer to haul off metal for free. The homeowner got a cleared yard. The hauler got paid twice, once for taking it, again at the scale. A good Saturday netted $50 to $75, close to $300 today. Environmental rules thinned this field through the 80s, but scrap hauling quietly financed more home repairs across small-town America than most people ever realized. Number 18. The roadside produce stand. Just a folding table at the yard's edge, piled with whatever the garden produced faster than the family could eat: tomatoes, sweet corn, green beans, zucchini, watermelon. In 1968, a bushel of tomatoes went for $2, and sweet corn sold for $0.25 a dozen. The operation ran on the honor system: a cigar box with a slit in the lid, nobody watching, almost nobody stealing. A family with a 1/4 acre of good soil could clear $50 to $100 a week at summer's peak, real money when a monthly mortgage ran around $90. The sharpest growers planted specifically for the stand, adding extra rows of whatever sold fastest. By August, it practically ran itself. Growing supermarket produce sections pushed most stands out by the mid-1980s, but for a generation, that table by the road was a real business with no license, no overhead, no employees. Number 19. Door-to-door knife and tools sharpening. He'd announce himself with 2 quick honks at the end of every block. Housewives came out with kitchen knives wrapped in dish towels, and farmers brought axe heads and mower blades. His grinding wheel sat mounted in the truck bed, and the sound of steel against stone always pulled kids to the sidewalk to watch the sparks fly. In the early 1970s, sharpening a kitchen knife cost $0.25, and a set of 6 ran $1. On a good afternoon, 40 to 60 knives could clear $15 to $20 for just a few hours of work. Spring was the busiest stretch. Every man dragging his mower out of the shed meant dull blades and worn saw chains again. Disposable knives and plug-in sharpeners killed off the trade through the 1980s, but back in its day, the sharpening truck was as welcome on the block as the bread man. Number 20. Selling night crawlers and live bait. In towns near any decent fishing lake, selling bait was one of the most dependable little businesses a family could run with almost no money down. After a hard rain, kids and adults grabbed flashlights and coffee cans and pulled fat crawlers straight out of soaked lawns and garden beds. By morning they'd filled enough styrofoam cups, a dozen to a cup, to sell off a hand-painted sign at the end of the driveway. In the late 1960s, a dozen crawlers went for 50 cents. By 1980, the price had climbed to $1.50. Serious sellers built worm beds in garages and basements, feeding colonies on coffee grounds and shredded newspaper and pulling out hundreds a week without ever leaving home. Gas stations bought in bulk, and bait shops placed standing orders. One man outside Branson, Missouri reportedly cleared $200 a week during bait season, all from worms raised in a plywood box behind his fence. Once Walmart started stocking packaged bait in the mid-1980s, the driveway signs disappeared. But for 20 years, night crawlers were cash pulled straight out of the ground after a storm. These 20 hustles were never business plans. They were survival tactics dressed up in work boots. The money was cash. The deals were sealed with a handshake. The marketing was one neighbor telling another that Ray could haul anything for $10 and always showed up on time. What shut most of them down was the same force that reshapes every local economy. The world got bigger, cheaper, and faster, and things that once needed a local person with local know-how could suddenly be bought off a shelf inside a building with fluorescent lights and a parking lot the size of a city block. What vanished along with them was proof that a person could build something real out of nothing but skill, consistency, and a reputation in a town where everyone eventually learned exactly what you were worth.